Hey, what's going on, friend? I'm Juan Pablo from 100% Finance. Now in this video, I'm going to share with you some credit improvement tips that you need to know before buying a house, whether it's a personal residence or an investment property. So a little bit about myself. I'm a full-time real estate investor, and as a result of buying properties, right, it's important that I qualify for mortgages. Now, assuming that you too are going to buy a property in which you need a mortgage, it's important for you to know where you stand credit-wise. And now, one thing I want to make clear, right? When you're buying an investment property or a personal residence, credit is not the only factor that comes into play when getting qualified for a mortgage. Of course, you need to have capital, such as down payment, to go towards the property. And you also need to prove your income, whether that's through W-2s, 1099s, tax returns, and so forth. Right? So outside of those things, the cash and your income, your credit plays a major role. Now, I would like to share with you some credit improvement tips so that you can get qualified for that investment property or that home of your dreams. All right, so let's get into a few of these tips. Tip number one, pay your bills on time. When you receive late pays, that has a huge impact on your credit score where the credit bureaus are concerned. Timely payments is essential, so pay your bills on time. Also, do not open new accounts. When you apply for credit, that's called a hard inquiry. That's when you reached out to a creditor and you gave them permission to run your credit. Inquiring or incurring, I should say, new hard inquiries on your credit report right before moving forward with a mortgage will have a negative impact on you actually being qualified for that mortgage. Because when you have a lot of hard inquiries, mortgage lenders think, well, maybe this person is thirsty. This person is desperate. They keep applying for all these loans right before they apply for this mortgage. Why is that? Are they desperate for financing? And they don't want to have a relationship with you lending-wise if you're perceived as being desperate. All right, here's a few more tips. You want to keep an eye on aging accounts, meaning if you had accounts on your credit report for some time, you want to make sure they're in good credit standing. So don't just set it and forget it. I made that mistake where I would have these credit card accounts, I would set up online bill pay, I would set it and forget about it. And then I realized, hold on, I have a late pay on my credit report. Why is that? Oh, because I would just pay the minimum payment, but I wasn't even thinking about the annual fee. Or, oh man, I forgot that I made this charge 3 weeks ago because I barely used this card, so I didn't know I made the minimum payment because I didn't receive the new updated bill because I moved. So many things happen, so you have to keep an eye on your aging accounts. But sometimes they'll creep up on you and put a charge on there. Trust me, I know. Now, speaking of accounts, you might be in the mindset of, well, I do have some aging accounts, Juan, but I rarely use them. Why not just close them? Well, age of your accounts has a positive impact on your credit score. So if you're applying for a mortgage, you want to make sure that you keep these old aging accounts open for as long as possible. Because I made that mistake. All these tips I'm sharing with you are things that I did wrong. But thank God I was able to learn from those mistakes to the point I can share with you a few tips in this video. So one thing that happened to me is I had an Old Navy credit card since I was 18 years old. And being that I had it for some time, I realized several years later, well, I don't really use this credit card as much, so why not just cut it up and just close my account? And then my credit score took a dip. My credit score was lower as a result, and I was furious. I said, why did my credit score drop? I asked my mortgage lender this, and he said, well, it looks like in your previous credit report, you had this credit card open and now it's closed. And I asked, why did you close it? I just wasn't using it. And he had this baffled look on his face. And it's just because you're not using it doesn't mean you should just close the card. If it's in good standing, because you had it for some years, Juan Pablo, then you should make sure that you keep that account open. But just keep an eye on it. So I encourage you to do the same. Age of accounts is important, and make sure you have no negative items on that age account, and keep it open for as long as possible. All right, here's a few more tips. Now I'm going to talk about debt utilization. So, in order to buy a property, whether it's a personal residence or investment property, it's not necessary that you pay your debt down to zero. And again, that's another mistake I made. because after I graduated from college, go University of Georgia, go Bulldogs, and I moved to New York City, work for the government, my credit was in bad shape. Not just because I had a lot of negative accounts on there, like collections and charge-off, but simply because my debt utilization was high. Meaning I had a lot of money charged to my revolving accounts, my personal credit cards, for instance. So I thought naturally, without seeking counsel or advice, without doing research on YouTube, learning through YouTube University, I just thought naturally, well, I need to pay my debt down to zero. So every dime I received that was in regard to disposable income, or discretionary income, I should say, I threw it towards paying down my debt, to the point I became debt free. I paid off $23,000 worth of debt in 2 years. That meant I was scrimping and saving on a ramen noodle diet for 24 months. You might be thinking, well, that's great. You paid off your debt to zero. Excellent. But guess what? I didn't have to pay it down to zero. Because most creditors, let's say mortgage lenders, they like to see your debt utilization to be lowered to the point of 30%. 30% or lower, meaning if you have a $1,000 credit card limit with Bank of America, and let's say you have $600 charged to that card, your debt utilization ratio or debt to credit ratio in that scenario is 60%. That's 600 over 1,000, which is not too good. Because most creditors, in this case mortgage lenders, they like to see your debt to credit ratio of 30% or lower. 30% or lower, okay? So you want to make sure you pay down debt to 30% or lower. But I recommend paying down to 30% and reaching out to a mortgage lender to say, hey, based upon where my debt utilization stands today, would I be able to qualify for this mortgage based upon this current debt utilization? Then if he says, or she says, yes, you will, then you can use that extra capital that you have that you didn't use to pay down your debt to zero to go towards your property. And that's what I wish I would have done, because I would have gotten to a property sooner and I would have more money towards the down payment. But being that I used that money to pay down debt, as well as, being that I used that money to pay down debt, that delayed me in getting the property sooner and having more money to go towards the down payment. So debt utilization is important, but always consult with your mortgage lender. Now here's some 2 tips in order to improve your debt utilization. One tip is, if it's in your financial means to do so, pay down the debt. To the point of 30% or lower. And I'm talking about revolving debt, let's say personal lines of credit and personal credit cards. Another way is to request credit line increases. You call your credit card company and you request a credit line increase without them pulling your credit, right? Because we talked about that, without a hard pull. Some companies will do that if you ask them to do it as a courtesy. It doesn't work all the time, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And so you want to make sure that you request a credit line increase to double what you currently have. So for instance, going back to that Bank of America credit card, your limit was 1,000. You had 600 charged to it. That's 60% debt utilization. So if you call that Bank of America credit card, hey, can you increase my credit limit to 2,000 instead of 1,000 as a courtesy? Don't ruin my credit. I'm about to get qualified for a home, so I can't have this on my mortgage. Can you do this for me as a courtesy? And if they say yes and increase it to 2,000, then your debt utilization in that scenario will be 600 over 2,000, which is 30%. Got it? So let's talk about pulling credit a tad bit more. When you allow some other creditor to pull your credit, that's called a hard pull. Now, having too many hard pulls, as I mentioned a few moments ago, makes you look desperate. But there is an exception. If you have a lot of hard pulls from a particular type of lender, let's say you went to a mortgage broker, and the mortgage broker, his or her job is to shop you around to different lenders. So you might see your credit being pulled from 3 or 4 different mortgage companies. And that situation is fine to have a lot of hard inquiries, because they're all from that same creditor in which you're trying to apply for, which is a mortgage. But I just want to make this differentiation, right? But if you're applying for a lot of personal credit cards and auto loans and so forth that has nothing to do with a mortgage, then that will have a negative impact on you getting qualified for a mortgage, because you'll be perceived as desperate in that situation, okay? So it's all right. And me personally, being a real estate investor even from a personal standpoint, I prefer to work with mortgage brokers over mortgage lenders. So even though I might have a few more hard inquiries working with a mortgage broker over a lender, I choose a mortgage broker because they will shop my profile to other lenders, to the one that best suits my needs. And that's the most important to me. Because if you go to, using Bank of America as an example again, if you go to a Bank of America branch and you request a mortgage, Bank of America can only offer mortgage products that that institution has available. They can only offer Bank of America products. But a mortgage broker say, well, you might not be a good fit for Bank of America, but if you go to this bank down the street, is a local community bank, it is a credit union or what have you, talk to Linda, she's the VP, and she'll be able to hook you up. So it's extremely important. So keep in mind, you do want to limit the number of inquiries that you receive, but if it's for mortgages, that's fine. But there's still a way around that as well. So one of the things that I do, personally speaking, I don't like hard inquiries, period, right? Even if it's from a mortgage broker and I'm actually trying to acquire a mortgage. So one of the things I do is I actually obtain a copy of my recent credit report. Now, receiving a credit report, that's called you will incur a soft inquiry. So soft inquiries are different from hard inquiries. Hard inquiries when another creditor or lender pulls your credit using their system. But a soft inquiry is when you take a look at your credit report using a credit monitoring service. So a credit monitoring service that I recommend is 100pfcreditcheck.com. That's 100 P as in Peter, F as in Frank, credit check, like you're checking your credit, 100pfcreditcheck.com. Go there, you'll be able to pull your credit. Now, it does not negatively impact your credit score. So your credit score will not go down if you pull a recent copy of your credit report every 30 days. So one of the things I do, I print out that credit report, I provide it to my mortgage broker and say, hey, I get it, you gotta shop it around. You know, you gotta shop my profile around to many different mortgage companies. I understand that 100%, but before you do, I wanna see my likelihood of me getting qualified for mortgage companies that you think I will qualify right off the bat. So here's a copy of my credit report. Please take a look and just give me some insight. Do you think based upon this credit report that I can qualify for a mortgage? And so, at what terms? So that's what I kind of do to kind of curb getting those hard inquiries early on. So that way the mortgage broker sees my credit report and can say, you know what, I'll have to shop you around to maybe 5 or 6 lenders. I think you will be a really good fit with the best terms that fit your situation, Juan Pablo. I think these 3 lenders will be the top ones for you. So pulling your credit report is A-okay, it's perfectly fine. Now, my other tip is this. These are my final tips. Once you pull that credit report, take a look at it. Look at the account, see if you have any public records, such as bankruptcies, foreclosures, tax liens. And then when you're looking at your account, see if you have any collections, charge-offs, and so forth. Because the goal is this: avoid receiving those negative items to begin with. Because when you receive negative items in your credit report, negative items could be late pays, as I shared earlier, collections, charge-offs, bankruptcies, foreclosures, evictions, judgments, medical bills, and that's all I can think of from the top of my head. But those things those negative things reporting in your credit report may have a negative impact on you applying or getting qualified, I should say, for a mortgage. Okay? Now, the best thing is to avoid them to begin with. Pay your bills on time. And if you feel that you're getting behind, reach out to your creditor. Be proactive. Don't wait until they start calling you, you're ignoring their calls, and they have no other choice in the matter but to put you in collections and so forth. Don't wait to that point. Reach out to them. Have a conversation. In other words, have a negotiation to see if you can structure some type of payment plan so that they won't reflect this negative activity on your credit report, especially since you're applying for a mortgage. Now, I get it. Sometimes it may be too late. You might have already incurred the collection, the charge-off, the bankruptcy, the medical bill, and so forth, which is perfectly fine. If that's the case, then you need to pursue credit repair prior to moving forward with getting qualified for a mortgage. Okay? So if you need credit repair, we'll be happy to help you. As I shared, me getting started in real estate investing, it was a hard process for me because starting off, I didn't have a lot of positive activity on my credit report. I had a lot of negative items. I paid myself through college, I borrowed a lot of money, and my credit score reflected that. So one of the things I did do was I was being very transparent. I went to a mortgage broker with my credit report and say, hey, here's a copy of my credit report. Based upon my credit report, will I be able to qualify for a mortgage? And the mortgage lender said, and the mortgage broker said, well, Juan Pablo, you do not, because your debt utilization is too high and you have a lot of negative activity in your credit report, such as collections. So one of the things I did was say, okay, cool. I see that activity on my credit report, so I'm gonna move forward with credit repair to get these negative items removed, and I'm gonna pay down debt. So once I took this action, and I paid down debt, increased my credit limits, and removed negative items from my credit report, then I ordered a new credit report, went back to my mortgage broker and said, hey, take a look. Looking squeaky clean, right? I got that pretty credit, that Holly Berry credit. Credit's so fine, so pretty, that mortgage companies want a banking relationship with me, a lending relationship with me. What do you think, mortgage broker? And he said, you know what? We can make something shake. We can move forward with this. And I ended up buying my first property at 26 years old. It was a duplex in which it was somewhat of a hybrid personal residence / investment residence where I lived in one unit and rent out the other. So it was sweet. It was great. It was a dream come true because I ultimately wanted to become a real estate investor, which I am now, full-time real estate investor. So that's what my last tip to you is. Take a look at your credit report. Don't be scared to take a look at it, right? In order to improve something, you have to see what negative items are on there, right? And once you see what the negative items on your credit report, it's empowering that, hey, you can get these things disputed, you can get them removed. And if you need assistance with that, with credit repair, just check the links below to learn more. We'll be glad to help. So hopefully I was helpful. If you found value, please like, please share, please subscribe. And as always, guys, this is to your success. Continue to earn passively, live passionately. Peace.